What's going on, guys? My camera refuses to work, so today we're going to be recording the video without a camera. However, today we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and their top 10 greatest players of all time. Starting off at number 10, I'm going to go with Sonny Jurgensen. Jurgensen helped the Eagles win a championship in 1960, led the league in passing yards twice while with the Eagles. He also led the league in interceptions a lot. He reminded me, he was really Brett Favre before Brett Favre. Transcendent as far as his ability to throw the ball deep, way ahead of his time in that category. But Sonny Jurgensen is certainly one of the greatest Eagles of all time. At number 9, we're going to go with Jason Peters, starting left tackle for the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl in 2017. Two-time first-team All-Pro selection, multiple times second-team All-Pro selection. I have a feeling Jordan Mailata is going to get up to this point one day, but Jason Peters is certainly for the time being, the greatest offensive tackle that the Eagles have ever had in their franchise's history. At number 8, we're going to go with Fletcher Cox. Has several franchise statistics to his name as far as defense goes. Probably the greatest defensive tackle in the history of their organization. If you're talking about a 4-3 defensive tackle. Also, the best defensive player on the Super Bowl winning Eagles team of the 2017. A lot of these players are from the last decade or so. For obvious reasons, that's when the Eagles won championships, and a lot of these players played very long for Philly. Fletcher Cox is number 8. Number 7 is going to be Randall Cunningham. If Randall Cunningham had played his entire career with the Eagles, he'd probably be higher on this list. In my opinion, he should have won an MVP or two. We know about how good it was as a dual threat quarterback as far as rushing. But no one talks about how good it was as a passer. Nearly had 4,000 passing yards twice with Philly. Almost won an MVP in 1988 because of that. Absolute playmaker. Just one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and I think super underrated. He comes in at number 7. However, number 6 is going to be the guy who I think provided more quality moments for Philadelphia, having led them to, if I'm not mistaken, 6 NFC Championship games. That would be none other than Donovan McNabb. McNabb never came close to being the top quarterback in the game, but certainly he had a lot of great moments. Carried in terrible Eagles offense and was a lot better than a lot of people gave him credit for. I might have him a little bit higher because of how valuable he was to the Eagles franchise, but in all good conscience, I just cannot put him over the next 5 guys. In my opinion, were just some of the greatest players ever at their respective positions. At number 5, that includes safety Brian Dawkins. Some people might have him a little higher. I really don't have a problem with that, but personally, I have him at number 5. 4-time first-team All-Pro selection. He played the latter half of his career with Denver, which is why which is only like 4 years, but that's why I don't have him a little bit higher. He easily is one of the greatest safeties of the 2000s. Instinctive, just absolutely a freak of nature. One of the hardest hitters and one of the most intimidating players in NFL history. We talk about Brian Dawkins, aka X Factor. And number 4, I'm going to go with Jason Kelce. Longevity plays a huge factor in this ranking. Jason Kelce played, of course, 13 seasons with the Eagles, was a 6-time first-team All-Pro selection, really aged like a fine wine. I have no doubt that he would have been as good, if not, close to as good, had he played a couple more seasons. Obviously, he was the best offensive line on a dominant Philadelphia offensive line that helped them win a Super Bowl in 2017. It also helped them get back to the Super Bowl in 2022. Whatever you want to say about Jason Kelce, he is certainly one of the top 5 greatest Eagles of all time, one of the greatest centers of all time. At number 3, I'm going to go with Steve Van Buren. 5 times he led the league, 5-time first-team All-Pro selection. 4 times he led the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Should have won a couple MVPs in my opinion. Won a couple championships for the Eagles in the late 1940s. Certainly the greatest running back in the history of that franchise and one of the greatest running backs, in my opinion, of all time. Without him, you wouldn't have guys like Christian McCaffrey or Marshall Faulk today. Steve Van Buren comes in at number 3. Number 2, I'm going to go with Chuck Bednarik. Multiple first team All Pro selections for the Eagles. If I'm not mistaken, 8 of them. He was he played on both sides of the ball, center and linebacker. Um, Bednarik, however, was known to be more of a center. In my opinion, he's the second greatest center of all time, dominant as far as his ability to just lock on to the defensive tackle and just not let them go anywhere. Chuck Bednarik was so strong and so ahead of his time. He has to come in at number 2 for me. But at number 1, it wasn't going to be anybody else other than Reggie White. Um, Arguably the greatest defensive player of all time, if not second best to Lawrence Taylor. Won a couple Defensive Player of the Year awards with um, with Philadelphia. Probably should have won more. Although his career is cut in half between Philadelphia and Green Bay, his dominance with the Eagles in what was it, an 8-year span is unparalleled to any other player that the Eagles have ever had. Um, Led one of the greatest defenses of all time in 1991. Just an absolute mauler, one of the most versatile players of all time, and just synonymous with the name Philadelphia Eagles defense and you know, and that entire era of the Eagles from the late 1980s to the early 1990s.